Leaving Mapleview was supposed to be a fresh start for me. But some things, well, they don't let you go. No matter how far you run, some shadows stick with you. I moved to the other side of town, not far, but just enough to feel like I'd left those narrow, dimly lit hallways and their secrets behind me. Found a small house. Barely had any furniture, but it was mine. Thought I'd finally get some peace. But peace, it's funny how fleeting it is when you've touched something beyond this world. Because a few nights in, I started noticing little things. Just odd, quiet moments. It'd be evening and I'd be sitting here much like I am now when I'd hear it, a faint, steady sound. At first I thought it was the old pipes creaking. The house was old after all. But as the nights went on, that sound, it started to take shape. They were footsteps, soft and deliberate, like someone testing their way through the dark. At first they'd start somewhere at the far end of the house like a distant heartbeat, but then they'd come closer, slow and steady, echoing in that strange way that only happens in silence. And every night, without fail, they'd stop, right outside my bedroom door. Now, I could have sworn it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe some part of me was just haunted by what I'd seen back at Mapleview. But then, things started getting stranger. One morning I woke up to find water on the floor, a thin, glistening trail that led from my bedroom door to the front door, as if someone or something had been walking there in the night. There was no sign of a leak, no reason for it to be there. I shrugged it off, tried to tell myself it was nothing, but a part of me knew better. You don't just unsee the things I saw. Days passed, then weeks, and every so often I'd catch the slightest whisper. Barely a sound, really. More like a breath, as if someone were standing right behind me, saying my name. Walter. And it wasn't just anywhere. I'd hear it on the quietest streets, even in the middle of the store. The kind of thing that makes your skin prickle. But it was one night in town when I was walking down Main Street that they took a turn. I'd finished some errands. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, and I was the only one on the street. Main Street was always quieter than the rest of town after dark, and that night the silence felt heavy, like I was the only one left in the world. I walked along, minding my own business, when I heard it again. Footsteps. But they weren't mine. No, these were slower, deliberate, like someone pacing, matching my rhythm. At first I kept telling myself it was just in my head, but every time I stopped, they'd stop too. And then they started again, coming closer. I turned the corner, picking up my pace, hoping to leave them behind, but the sound, it followed me, echoing off the buildings, getting louder with every step. My heart pounded, and I remember the feeling creeping up my spine, that same chill I used to get back at Mapleview. I couldn't shake it, that feeling that something was watching me, following me. I picked up the pace, nearly jogging by then, when suddenly I heard a voice.
Walter, they follow you.
It was faint, crackling, like a whisper caught in the wind, but I knew that voice. It was Mrs. Langston. She was saying my name, Walter, as clear as day, but her voice was wrong, twisted, as if coming from far, far away. I stopped dead in my tracks, not daring to breathe, and that's when I saw her, or rather her shadow. There at the end of the street, where the light from the street lamp faded into darkness, was the outline of a figure, a shadow, stretched long and thin, too tall to be real. It was her. I knew it. just by the way it stood, motionless, watching. And as I stared, frozen in place, she lifted her hand, pointing right at me, and that whisper grew louder, merging with the steady sound of the footsteps. I couldn't move. It was like I was glued to the ground, trapped by those eyes I couldn't even see. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadow began to fade, sinking back into the darkness, taking the footsteps with it. The street went quiet, like nothing had happened, but I could still feel that chill, that sense that something had left its mark on me. I don't know how long I stood there before I finally managed to move, to stumble home, but I knew that night that whatever was at Mapleview, it had followed me. It wasn't bound to those halls. It was bound to me. Since then, I can't walk down Main Street after dark. The footsteps, the whispers, they're always there, waiting, watching. They've made their way into my life, my home. Even now, some nights when it's quiet and the wind's just right, I hear them, soft but steady, echoing down the hallway, stopping just outside my door like they did at Mapleview, reminding me that shadows, they don't stay in one place. They find you wherever you are. If you enjoyed this story from my youth, don't forget to subscribe to the Shadow Recordings. There's more to share.